Still dark. Not anymore. Greetings, Mark Garang here, and my guests today are 3 out of the 5 candidates who are running for 2 school board seats. Alex Loth, Michaela Clement, and Matt Haley. How are you guys doing?
Good, how are you?
Good. Good. So I've got plenty of questions for you, but Alex, why don't you introduce yourselves just for a minute? Alex, go ahead.
Sure. Well, thanks for having us, Mark, and I'm really excited to run for school board. I've been a resident here for a couple of years now. I have a kid in the middle school and another one in the high school, and a wife who actually works at the middle school. And you know, we have a fantastic educational system here, but I guess I won't get too deep into why I'm running. That's probably a later question. But happy to be here, excited to try to make the school system the best it can possibly be, and that's the plan.
Sure. Michaela?
Hi, I am a local. I have 4 kids that have gone through the Conway school system. 2 are in high school, one's in middle school, one's in elementary school. So I started with the school board, looking to try to make a difference, to be informed, to know what was going on. And I just feel like I have so much more to offer to the school board that I would love to continue.
All right, and you were, and just so people know, you're on the school board now.
Yes.
And you were appointed after, I think, Cassie Capone.
Yes, I appointed
left.
Cassie's seat, which
Yeah.
is why I'm up for election in April, even though her term was supposed to go another year or so.
Right, okay.
But-
And that?
Matt Haley. I've lived in the Valley my whole life. Went to school I went to Conway Elementary and then Kennett Middle School, and well, it was junior high at that time, and then I actually went to Freiburg Academy for high school. But I got 2 kids in elementary school, and just want to try to make their educational happenings as good as they can be. So.
You all feel as though, I mean, one thing about, serving on these boards is that it takes a lot of time. You all feel equipped to spend, Michaela, how much time do you spend as a school board member?
Oh, it seems like countless hours. People think the meeting's every other week or so, which honestly is what I thought in the beginning, but there's so many committee meetings, and there's even committees that you're not on that you want to go to those. So my family's been really supportive and great, but it's many hours reading over the agendas, looking at things, making sure if I have questions, reaching out to Kevin Richard and all of these things. So it's many hours a week, but it's an important job.
Sure. All right, so let's get on to the issues. The biggest one, I guess, is the budget and the school closing. So how do you all feel about whether we should close the school to begin with? Alex, let's start with you.
No, I'm on the end, so I get to answer.
Yeah, well, we'll go the other way in a minute.
It's the biggest question facing our school district, and the toughest one, right? Nobody likes the idea of closing a school. Nobody likes the idea of losing a neighborhood school with all the community that's involved and everything. So it's tough. Conway's not the only community that's facing this. If you look across the country, there's school districts all across the country that are facing declining enrollment, and they're looking at or implementing closing down schools. And I think what they're doing is they're saying, what's more important than the facility is the educators and what's actually happening in those schools. So facing where we are with the declining enrollment we've had over the last 20 years, which doesn't look like it's going to greatly change, but nobody has a crystal ball, right? And looking at kind of the budgetary constraints that we have in this town, exacerbated by the reevaluation we just had that put a huge burden on the residents of this town. I've reluctantly come around to, unless something changes drastically with what we see in enrollment numbers, that closing a school is the best way to provide the best quality education for our kids. Because I think that's everyone's first priority, right? Is we need to provide the best education we can. We're doing some things well, some things maybe not well. We can do better, and I think this is a way to do it, is to intelligently close a school, take those funds, repurpose them towards making the education the best it can be.
Michaela?
And we may all disagree on this.
Yeah.
It'll be a good conversation.
I think there could be some
Because
disagreement on
it's a
this
hard
board.
one. But
Yeah, it's no secret that I voted not to close the school. The reasons for that was I felt that the committee that was tasked with looking at all of our options, I don't feel that they looked at all of the viable options. I think that public preschool or a partially public preschool were options that we could have looked at.
So when you say public preschool, that's to basically use that space?
Yes, that we
Okay.
could have used that space, bringing in revenue, because if it was partly tuition, partly publicly funded, it was an option. I don't know that it would have worked. I had looked into some of it, but I don't feel that the committee did their due diligence on that. I think they kind of went into it with the idea that we're going to close a school. Which one should we close? How do we do it? So I voted no at the time about closing a school. However, the vote passed that we are going to close a school. So that said, I want to make sure that we do it in the best possible way for our students. We need to make sure that it's a smooth transition, that we give them the best education that we can. I don't know that all of that's been discussed yet. I know a lot of it has been put towards the administrators to make their recommendations. And while I think that's fantastic because they are the boots on the ground, they're the ones in the buildings every day with the students and they know best, I think that it's important that the school board not simply push that off onto the administrators, that then they take their recommendations, take the information and make the hard decisions and do what's best for the students and the staff and then the community.
So even though, if I can summarize what you said, even though you've initially voted against closing a school, you've accepted it now.
Right, the school board voted to close a school. It was a majority vote. I was in the minority, but it was a majority vote. So therefore we have to move forward with it.
All righty. Matt?
Yeah, no one, like Alex said, nobody really wants to close a school. I've been against it for a while, and I've been attending a lot of the school board meetings and some committee meetings, and when you go to those, you get a lot of information that you wouldn't otherwise get, and it's time. It is time to do it with the declining enrollment and the increased property taxes and all that. It is time, and I think the most important thing is that we, instead of bickering and arguing about which school and then a school gets picked and everyone's upset, we got to really work together as a community and make this difficult thing into something good.
So you've accepted, in a perfect world you would not close a school, but you've accepted it also?
So, yeah, closing a school is definitely going to disrupt kids' lives, everybody's lives, all the students and the parents and teachers. So it's going to be changes for everybody. And in a perfect world, everything would just kind of stay as it is, and everybody's at their schools and they're comfortable. And but I think if we can all,
I mean, one interesting twist to this is that if we had new school board members, you actually could reverse the vote.
That was brought up at the school deliberative. I think Stacy Sand brought that up, saying that they're worried that
could happen
if the proposed budget passes and new members are brought in. I don't, unless something drastically changes, like all of a sudden 300 kids move into town. It just isn't. If you look at the data, it's just not feasible to have all three schools open.
Okay, that's fair. I'm a little surprised actually that you're all in agreement with that.
Yeah.
And so we'll start with you, Matt. Which school?
I don't think I can fairly say. I think it's something we need to. I don't have all of the information from each school, so I don't know that I can really say one way or another which school it should be. I think we need to look at all of them and consider all the different options to do with the building, and how much maintenance each building is in need of. And
you have a gut feeling?
That.
I mean, Kevin Richards says Pine Tree.
I don't know.
Okay, Michaela?
I have to say the same thing. I don't know. There was a discussion recently at the school board about if we closed a school, what would we do with that building? Would we mothball it? Would we lease it? Would we sell it? I think that's a decision that needs to be made first. What would you plan to do with the building? And then maybe figure out if we wanted to sell it, which building would make the most sense, which would be the most feasible. There's also the issue that charter schools have a right of refusal, or that they could buy it at market value. So we have that to consider, but I think that we need to figure out what we want to do with the empty building first, and then go from there.
All right, Alex?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I'm looking forward to hearing what the community has to say. There's a couple of community forums coming up. That's been, I don't know how well it's been advertised, but the elementary parents are invited on March 19th, and another one on April 3rd for the general community to come out and voice their opinions on all of this. So that's part of it. There's a lot to go into it, and I wouldn't opine right now on which of the 3 schools should be closed down. They each have their problems and their attributes, right? I mean, Pine Tree School doesn't have water and sewer. Conway Elementary School is in or very close to a floodplain. John Fuller School has the lowest enrollment of the 3 schools. So there's good reasons for all 3 schools. And I agree that it does come down to what are we going to do with that property down the road as well. That should be part of the consideration. And one of the things that worries me is anytime a municipality or school department gets rid of property, it's great because hopefully there's money that flows to the school board or the town from that, and then perhaps the property goes back on the tax rolls, which is good. Of course, if it goes to a nonprofit, that doesn't go back on the tax rolls. But the bigger problem is once you've lost that property, it's real hard to get it back.
Yeah.
So I'd like the community to look long and hard, and I think this goes beyond the school board to the select board, to what, is there another municipal use of the facility, whichever one it is, before it's gone.
Yeah, and I think that's a case, you could make that case for keeping John Fuller because, you know, it's attached to the SAU, the old SAU 9 property too, right? Where the old SAU 9 building was located on, right on the corner of Pine Street there, and before it moved down to the middle school. So this, you know, it's a pretty good sized campus, piece of land there that could be used either for the future school or a municipal building or who knows what. I mean, that's an incredible piece of land right in the middle of town, which gets to the next, leads to the next question. Chairman Mike DeGregorio has floated the idea of building a brand new school sometime in the future. I mean, that's a little bit of an esoteric discussion, but Michaela, what do you think? Does that make sense?
To me, the idea of considering a huge multi-million-dollar project when we're arguing over $1 million school closure doesn't seem reasonable at the moment. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things is that, you know, if we're facing tens of $millions in repairs, that, hey, why not have a bond and just get a brand new school that has the right security and so forth. Matt?
I mean, a new school sounds great, but you know, we've got a new high school that is in need of, you know, relatively new high school that's in need of a lot of work. So, you know, just because you have a new building doesn't mean you don't need to maintain it. So if, you know, I think we need to look more into maintaining what we have and trying to make do with what we have for now. Because if we're trying to save the taxpayers' money, I don't think spending $100 million on a new school is going to do that. That's
Okay, Alex?
It's an interesting question, and I like the fact that Matt's gone from the one number I heard of 80 to 100, because I'm sure it's would be even more than 100 to build a school. The numbers would be big. It might be a big expenditure in the short term, but it could end up being the right plan. I don't know. I haven't given it that much thought, but if it would depend a lot on what the state is reimbursing for schools. If there's an environment where the state is reimbursing a large percentage of school construction costs, it's something we should seriously look at and consider, especially if we've got older schools that don't function for what we want or need a significant amount of upgrades. I think thankfully that's not today's problem to solve, but it's something we should be thinking about, because, you know, a fully new modern facility sounds great, but
Okay,
the devil's
so-
in the details.
Can I say
Right.
something?
Sure, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I think, though, that something people need to keep in mind is that the facilities that we have that have our students in them, while you're considering building a bigger school, a new school, during that time frame, we still need to upkeep the buildings that have students in them. We need to maintain the safety of the buildings that have the students in them now. So you're still looking at those expenses in the short term, even if you were planning to build this giant new super school. So then you'd have $80–100 million budget for that, and the repairs right now that need to happen. So it's just something to consider.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, which leads to the budget and the fact that all three of you have kind of signing off and closing a school, you know, is interesting. But the budget. So we have the default. We have the school board budget and the default budget.
Right.
Voters are going to have a choice of two, and it's basically $1 million or $1.5 million difference between the two. And I know that Kevin Richard, Superintendent Kevin Richard, has said that if we make that decision and get the default budget now, we're going to have to close the school this fall. So one question is, you know, which budget do you support? The default budget of the $39 million and something, or the school budget of $40 million? And then how, in the context of that, how do you philosophically sort of approach the balance the needs of the school and the wants of the school versus what's happening with the taxes, and as we know, as Alex, I think you pointed out, we just had the reval, which has already added $1,000 to the average homeowner. So Alex, why don't you start with that one about the budget overall? Because I think, and I'll add one more piece, that even though we're saving 1.9 million on the bond that's retired, when you put it all together with the operating budget and the special articles, it's going to increase the whole budget by about 5 or 6%. So we're not having a flat budget, regardless.
Right. So the budget by itself, it's a good question. It's a really important question. The budget by itself is down, I think, 1.74% based on last year's budget. And if you look at the last, say,
But that includes the 1.9 million savings.
correct. So there's a bond that came off. You're right. In terms of total cost to taxpayers, if you look at the budget over the last 4 years, I think I was just looking at this again today. It's up something like 6% over 4 years, and inflation in the same time period is something like close to 20%. So our school budgets, in real dollar terms, have been going down for the last 4 years. Now, that doesn't help people who are looking at this reevaluation that just happened, which was, we talked about it a little bit. Residences are up 100 and some odd percent. Mobile homes are up 170%. And commercial properties are up 34%. So some huge shift of cost from commercial to residential. That's a big problem. And as I wrote into the newspaper a week or two ago, we can't solve that on the school budget alone. We can't solve that, or shouldn't solve that, on the backs of our kids. So I absolutely support the school board budget as it was presented, and not the default budget. I think that simply taking a state formula to run our schools is not the way to do it. I mean, the school board and the administration worked really hard together on a responsible budget for the schools, and it allows us to have that time period moving forward to carefully make this huge transition that the town's been trying to do for 20 years. Going to the default budget, I think would be a mistake, and I hope voters will support it. I've seen in the past, voters have generally supported the schools and what they do. They're not in love with closing a school. I looked at the last time that was voted on, and it failed very narrowly. So anyway, I hope voters come out and support the responsible school budget.
What do you think about the budget, and what responsibility does the school board have to taxpayers in general?
I think that the school board, while we have a responsibility to the taxpayers, the first responsibility is to the students. I think that they're the ones that don't have a voice, and the administrators and the school board worked really hard, as Alex said, to come up with a budget that would meet the needs of the students. I know for some people it's really hard. They're not in the schools. They don't see what's going on, and they think, oh, 40 years ago we didn't need all these family liaisons, or we didn't need this, or we didn't need deans, or we didn't need that. Things have changed. The needs of the school children have changed. I think that we need to have the budget that was proposed by the admin and by the school board, because, as Alex said too, we need to make sure that this transition is smooth, that it goes easily, it gives us time to make it happen. I'm a homeowner too. I was hit with the tax reval like everyone else. My taxes doubled. I get it. It's a pinch, and it hurts, and it's hard. But I think that we can't fix it just by punishing the schools. The kids, the budget is what it is for the needs that the students have. And I think that it really needs to be supported. I pray that people will come out and vote for the school board budget so that we can continue to provide the education that our kids need, and to give them the chance to smoothly and intelligently make this decision and this transition.
Sure. Matt?
Yeah, I agree with Michaela and Alex. If we go to the default budget, then the school board's going to be forced to close the school and figure all the logistics out in a relatively short amount of time. And that's, this isn't something you're just, oh, we're just going to move kids around and stuff. I mean, there's so many different things that you have to consider. So to give us the most amount of time to be able to get everything sorted out and do it properly and look out for everybody's best interests, I think we need to go to the school budget.
Now, when that $1 million, or the default, which is I guess 1.4 million or 5 million less than the school budget, Kevin Richards says, oh, we have to absolutely close the school. That'll force us to close the school this fall. Other people say, it's $1 million out of a $40 million budget, whatever that is, that it could be done just taken out of the budget. So if the default budget is approved by the voters, what would you do? What would you choose? If you're, if literally we're working with that budget, it's $1 million less, do we close the school this fall, or take it out of the budget someplace else? Michaela, start with you.
I don't know where you would take it out of the budget. I feel like that question sort of assumes that there is a surplus in the budget or this amount of money that we don't actually need that doesn't really have to be done. You're going to have to cut programming, whether it be your specials, music, arts, things like that, whether it be some of the other programs for the kids, you're going to have to make drastic cuts. And I don't see how that's educationally beneficial to our children. So the idea of closing a school that rapidly is terrifying to me. I think it would be an upheaval for all of the kids, but if it came back that way, I don't know. The admin has said we would have to cut so much that we can't find another way to save $1 million. So I think I would probably go with what they say. If they say they can't find it without drastically impacting the students, then we'd have to make the terrible choice of closing a school in, 4 months?
Alex,
Yeah,
budget or school?
Yeah, let's hope we're not faced with that choice, but I would fight really hard to not close the school the following year, even if we had to make some horrendous cuts to programs, which nobody wants. Just thinking off the top of my head, I think that would be preferable to closing the school this coming year. Closing the school this coming year it's too short a time frame to put everything in place and to do this in a way that doesn't drastically affect kids' education. So I think you'd have problems in the longer term if you closed a school that quickly. We'd be better off making some sort of also horrendous cuts to the ongoing programming, et cetera, that we have than going ahead and closing school in the coming year. So that's what I would try to do.
Yeah, administrators, principals, and everyone, they're already having to make some big cuts every year to what they would like to have to offer the students. So that's tough. You'd have to really look at the numbers and see what you would have to cut. It would probably be, it would end up being personnel, it would end up being programs. So you have to look at that and really see if that's something you would want to do or how feasible it would be to try to cram everything you need to do involved with closing a school into a 4-month period.
Now, they've been talking about closing a school forever, and I think they have plans. They've been planning it forever. And so I realize it would be a burden on the administration. I mean, you have to go from A to B or whatever. But I honestly don't understand why it's such a big deal for the kids. I mean, there are like 20% of the kids in the school system that come from out of town every year. I mean, they're used to it. There's another 10 to 15% of the kids that actually go among the schools because they're, couch surfing, among different parents going school to school. They start at Conway, they end at Pine Tree. So do you really think it's that much of, and if let's say we close Pine Tree, those kids are going to whatever Conway with their friends, So do you really think it's that traumatic for kids to make that transition? If you're a good parent, you say, hey, we're going to have fun. We're going down to Conway. I mean, people move all the time and go to new schools.
Yeah, they do. But also you want some consistency in your kids' lives. So it is definitely a lot easier for, to have your kid know, okay, I'm going here. Right. This is my school. I know all the teachers. And then, to all of a sudden say, oh, by the way, next year, everything is changing. It's a big change for kids. And especially with, we've already been through a lot of very big shakeups with schools during COVID. And so it's a lot.
Right. Michaela, you think you have one in third grade?
She's in 4th grade.
Oh, yes. I'm close, right?
Yeah,
Good
yeah.
guess. I mean, really, if you told your 4th grader, geez, hey, this is going to be great. We're going to move to a new school. You don't think that?
She knows. I mean, she knows that this is a possibility, and we've talked about it. And of course, I've said, yeah, it'll be great. You'll still have friends. You'll make new friends, and you talk it up and you try to make it as great as possible. But she also knows that there's the community of her school. And people talk about it's not the building, but there's a community at her school. My daughter happens to go to Pine Tree. My husband works at John Fuller, so I know the kids over there have a community there. They have a school family, it's a feel. So the idea for these kids to go to someplace different, something new that's not their community, their family, it is a big deal. And I know in the scope of their life, maybe it's not the most traumatic thing that will ever happen to these kids, but is that the best way to do it? That it's not the most traumatic thing? No, but it's something that will impact them. So I think that we need to do it more slowly, get it prepared, get them prepared, teachers prepared. And I think that there's also some things with, you have teachers whose students go to the same school they do. Well, what happens when their student is in the district here and they go to that school, but the teacher is sent over to what was John Fuller and now will be some whatever new school because they're going to rebrand them both, whatever schools are left. And so now you have parents in one school and their kids in another school, and it's a lot of upheaval for a lot of people. So I
Sure.
think it is a big deal.
All right, Alex, I think it's a big deal.
One of my thoughts on this whole transition is the best way to get the community to really buy into and appreciate what's going on is to make what we're doing a better alternative than what we have now. And I think just moving the kids over and doing nothing else doesn't achieve that. I've heard the principal of the middle school, Rick Bichet, say that there's work that needs to be done in the middle school to accommodate this. You get that big hulking building with 11 classrooms we're not using. I believe there's some reconfiguration of work that needs to happen in the middle school to accommodate the sixth graders that are coming in. And how are you reconfiguring the schools that stay open or improving them and making sure that they've got the extracurriculars, the music, everything else in place so that it's a better experience for the kids who are going there. If we want the community to really embrace this and understand that this is an improvement and a change for the long run, we need to do it right. And doing it in 4 months is not going to do it right.
Okay. So putting the school closing aside, what do you think about changing the makeup of the primary and the middle school so the middle school is now 6, 7, and 8? I think that's generally a good idea, apart from the transition of the closing. Michaela?
I think this topic came up a few years back when my younger son was in 5th grade heading into 6th grade or 6th grade getting ready to go to the middle school. And I thought about it long and hard as a parent from his perspective too. I think that's a funny age. The kids can be still little kids of the elementary school age and they can enjoy those things. But towards the end of the year, yeah, they're the big kids, they're the cool kids, they're ready to be in middle school. I personally went to a middle school that was 6, 7, 8. I think it can work. I think it can be educationally sound. I think that can work really well. There are things that we need to figure out from after school programming. Our 6th graders currently benefit from Project Succeed and they have the ability to take the after school programs. We're looking at trying to expand that to the middle school, but that's something that's not currently there for them. I think that it could work either way, but I don't see an issue with moving the 6th grade if we can figure out the configuration of the building and making sure that they have functioning classrooms and classrooms that are appropriately sized and all of those things. But I think it can work.
Alex?
I also went to a 6, 7, and 8 school. Middle school is such a tough age, and I think out of all the ages, it's the one where social emotional learning is the most important. That's a term that's thrown around all the time.
Really? I thought in 6, 7, 8 we should just put them in a cage somewhere.
Yes.
Let them come out as ninth
Yes.
graders when they're actually normal.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
So other principals I remember saying that, what they're learning academically is incredibly important, as it is in all the grades, but maybe more than any other grade. Middle schoolers are going through so many changes. It's a tough age for a lot of kids. So I think 6, 7, and 8 can work great together, but I think it needs to be done right so that there's some divisions between the grades. I think you minimize the contact to some degree between 6th graders and 8th graders. I'm not a teacher myself. They know far more about this than I do, but yeah, I think 6, 7, and 8 it works well in a lot of places, and it can work well here if we do it right.
Matt?
Yeah, I agree. I think it just needs to be done correctly. I've heard from parents of middle school kids, especially the 7th grade kids that have just gotten into middle school, that middle school is a huge change for them and they weren't quite ready for it. So I think it's going to be important to make it so that 6th grade isn't just a completely different experience, but try to wean them into it a little more than just here's a whole new building, a completely different, a whole mess of new kids you've never met before. Just here you go, have fun.
Right.
Try to make it a little bit more of a ease the transition in for them.
But you're all, go ahead.
If I may on that,
Sure.
My son just went through this from John Fuller to the middle school. He's a 7th grader now, and I think the schools do a pretty good job of teeing them up because no matter what age it happens, Matt's absolutely right, it's a big change. So I guess that would just have to be backed up to 5th grade where they
How
get
do
to work
the school enrollment over the last maybe 10 years or so has gone from about 2,000, and I think we're down to about 1,550 or something like that. And Michaela, you touched on it about that we need liaisons and all that, but how do you explain to a layperson how the staffing is increased or not decreased, even though the number of students in our system has basically gone down by a quarter?
Part of that, I think, is the nature of the students, the nature of the families. Our schools are tasked with so much more, giving so much more to the students than just the academics.
And why do you say that? I mean, what do you mean by that?
There are so many more needs for these kids. Our schools are helping to feed these kids. They're washing clothes for kids that need it. The homeless population has skyrocketed. It's astounding how many kids are couch surfing. You talked about them switching from school to school because they're couch surfing or they're living in motels. So those things, there's basic fundamental needs that our schools are meeting. The family liaisons are helping to set up doctor's appointments, making sure kids get to school. All of these things that yes, there's those that will say that should be the state should take care of that. And maybe they should, but they're not. And these are kids. So how do you look at a second grader that's hungry and say, go home, your parents should feed you, they should get help, they should feed you. You've got so many more behaviors. I've noticed that I worked in an elementary school for a while. I'm now in a high school setting, but I worked in elementary schools. And the difference from when I was a kid and you sat at your desk all day and you did things and you raised your hand if you spoke. And we've created an opportunity now for kids to be more open, more critical thinkers, more objective. But we've also sort of gone that we've now are incorporating more behaviors and we're trying to deal with those things. So I think that each school, like you hear that the staffing is too much, there's too much staffing and the enrollment has gone down. I think that the needs of the kids are more. So I think it's important for the administrators in each building to figure out what staffing they need for their students. I think that people would be astounded if they went into the schools sometimes and saw what the teachers are facing every day, what's going on, what these kids need. And coming off of COVID, these kids, some of them, my daughter was in kindergarten when COVID hit. So halfway through kindergarten, she was home. She didn't go back right away in first grade. So she had almost a whole year that she missed of all of that developmental time frame. And that's a big part of kids learning how to behave in school, how to share. And then when they go back, they couldn't share. You can't share with your friends. You can't touch anything. You can't do anything. You can't talk to them. Your friend from next door, no, you're in a different class. You can wave across the playground. So all of these social and emotional things that they didn't get. And now we expect them, the third grade, fourth grade, you know how to do those things. But they don't, and so we're trying to teach them and trying to have them learn all of these things again. So I think the staff is needed so often in ways that people don't realize.
Matt, what do you think about that? I mean, even outside of the liaisons and the special needs for disadvantaged kids, one way or the other, emotionally or physically even. What about, we have a low teacher-student ratio, I believe. So what's your general thought about staffing?
I think our administration has done a great job, and I don't think that they're going to push to have more staff than they feel they actually need. So, the principals, they know what their students need, and they're going to advocate for them and try to get the staff that they need to best support their kids.
Alex?
Well, part of it's just a question of facilities, right? If you lose a certain number of kids, you may not have lost enough to cut out an entire classroom. There's a lot of our classrooms are 12 or 13 kids, but you can't put them together, especially at the lower grades, into one classroom. We have certain standards for how many kids we have in each class, right? So I think a lot of it is, some of that is solved as you consolidate into fewer schools. And a lot of it is what Michaela said. There are a lot more needs than when we all went to school, and the school is taking care of a lot of things they didn't do before.
Yeah. And let's talk about test scores. They're not great. They're not great in our school system in general. And when I interviewed Kevin Richard and asked him about that, he said, well, what's important is growth, right? Which is a new term for me. I'm not a school person. I'm not in the schools. And then I'm on the superintendent search committee. And when we interviewed a couple of candidates and asked them about test scores, they said the same thing. It's about growth. So I appreciate that. But test scores are test scores. And even on the college level with SATs, like I think Dartmouth and a couple of the Ivy Leagues are reinstituting test scores, the SATs, because it's just part of it. So Alex, what do you think about the importance of test scores? And since they are a little bit low in our school system, some of the schools, most of the schools, should we address those test scores specifically, or what's your philosophy regarding that?
So I actually went through a teacher education program when I was in college, and I came out a teacher. And I remember when I was doing my student teaching thinking, man, these teachers are teaching to these tests. No one was doing current events. I remember stopping my Spanish classes at the time to do current events with them because of the way the teachers were needed to teach to these tests. So, okay, teaching to the test entirely and not doing a more holistic curriculum is a problem. But put that aside for a second. Tests are important. We have to have some sort of baseline way to understand across our own schools and across other districts. Are our test scores great? They're not. I was just looking at them recently. It looks like we're holding steady or improving coming out of the pandemic and a lot of the different standardized tests we do, so I think that's great. I think I understand the focus on growth in that, but that's only one aspect, right? You want to make sure wherever a kid is, that that kid is growing and learning to his or her potential. I think that's fantastic. But I do have concerns about rigor, for lack of a better term, in education. I've seen it in my own kids' education, both in the Conway district and before in another district, thinking,
You mean lack of rigor?
yeah, are they working as hard? And look, some of that is middle schoolers and high schoolers don't tell their parents anything about what they're doing, and that's on me to figure out what they're actually doing. But yeah, test scores and how kids perform is really important. At the end of the day, we want to make sure we're giving these kids the best education we possibly can, so they come out of there able to.
So they can take the SAT scores.
SAT, sure,
yeah.
but also read, write, understand history, so don't repeat it, be citizens, take care of the rest of us when we're old and in our dotage. Like, there's a lot of good reasons to.
Okay, test scores. But this is going to be a double question for you guys. Since you mentioned about that, I'm sure you all attended the deliberative school session, right? And you saw the exchange with Bill Marvel, right? And so he was trying to make the point, even though he's very eloquent in his own way, but he was trying to make the point that the liberal arts curriculum is diminished at the high school. He was doing it by kind of criticizing the technical part of the school, which probably wasn't a great political way to do it, but that was his point. The point was that the liberal arts program. So what do you think? You think we should have more rigorous liberal arts, humanities in high school?
Well, thank you for letting me continue to talk. That's great. I appreciate it. I went to a liberal arts.
Michaela and Matt get a turn too. So
I know.
Keep it short.
I went to a liberal arts school myself, and I deeply believe that we need to understand culture and history and language, and kids need to read. That's my biggest concern, is our kids reading. So one of the things I tell people I absolutely love about the high school here is that kids have the opportunity to do both. In a lot of towns, if at 13 or 14 years old, you're faced with a choice. You're going to the technical school or you're going to the high school. What 13 or 14-year-old knows what they want to do with their life, right? Mm-hmm. So my son is able to take all the different classes that he's taking, his English and his math and his this and his that, and he is finally reading things and writing essays, and I totally love that. But he also absolutely loves the construction trades programs, and he was working with Andy Shaw on the CAD programs and this and that. So we've got a phenomenal opportunity that I think we should be incredibly proud of in that high school. Can the construction trades program, the entire career tech program be better? I'm sure it can, and we should work on that. And we have an opportunity there because we need a new director for that program, so that's great. And can the liberal arts portion be improved? I'm sure it can, and we can work towards that goal.
Michaela, test scores and about the liberal arts technical.
Test scores, while I agree that they're important, they do give us a snapshot as to how our students are doing, and they give you sort of a broad overview. I just worry because teaching to the test can be such an issue in some places, and that scares me. I think we want to raise critical thinkers, not test takers. However, I also caution that sometimes the tests, currently the written portion, the essay writing for, I think it's our fourth graders this year, is being scored by hand for the state assessment because the AI programming algorithms that they had were flawed and scored a lot of them as zeros. So they've discovered that their algorithms are wrong when they're trying to use these AI processes. So now they're hand scoring them so that they can better create their computer. I don't know anything about computers, but so that they can better create their programs to grade these essays to get a better idea. So I think that sometimes when you have such a detailed digital thing, you're losing out on some of the human interaction of it. And I think I've also been in a situation in a class where a state assessment was done for a science class, and we were administering it, and it didn't work. It was shadows and things, and it didn't work. And we had to notify the state, this doesn't work. The kids can't perform this assessment. So sometimes your test scores, they don't always represent what the kids are doing. These kids were doing amazing things and had all this great science knowledge, but this particular assessment wasn't going to show any of that.
So what do you think about the liberal arts program or the humanities program classes? Because I think we only teach one foreign language now. Is that true? Spanish?
I thought it was.
I think it's two.
Spanish and French.
French, we still do French.
I believe we still have both.
Yeah.
Yes.
And for some people, English is the third, right?
Right. Yeah. We
Most
do
of
have
us,
some
but
students.
anyway. So Matt, what do you think about the test scores and how important they are?
It is nice to have a sort of a baseline with stuff, but like Michaela said, they're not infallible. They're not perfect. And especially where we are, if you compare our test scores with the top 50, yeah, they don't look great. But then if you look at the percentage of free and reduced lunch in the top 50, only one of those schools has a rate above 25%, and there's only, I think, 5 in the top 100. Every single one of our schools has more than 25% free reduced lunch, with the highest being, I think, 48% of the students at an elementary school. So it's a demographic difference. I mean, there's kids out there that they're going to school, they're doing what they're supposed to, but they've got big struggles that are also weighing on them. So to put their educational value on a test that's scored by a computer doesn't mean a ton to me.
Yeah, I think Rye is the #1, had like the top scores in their
It's
free and
up there,
reduced
yeah.
program. They get like 3% in
Right.
the program.
It's
Now we have a new superintendent. We're going to have a new superintendent at some point.
Working
And
on
Kevin
it.
Richards, everybody, Kevin's done a wonderful job over all these years. What qualities would you look for in a new superintendent, Matt? Like, what do you think his job should be? One thing, Kevin and I, and I've taught Kevin and I, we disagree on a lot of things, but I think we get along, and I really respect him.
Yeah.
I sometimes wonder why, when I see the school board meetings, why he doesn't insert himself a little bit more, basically. And I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
So-
I mean, it's such an interesting school district we have, because we've got the Conway schools, but then as they get older, you've got Bartlett and Jackson and Madison and all these other schools that come together. So it's a very unique setup. So the superintendent has to be very open-minded and flexible with a lot of stuff, because they have a lot of different responsibilities to all these different kids. I mean, maybe we can just talk Kevin into staying for a little longer, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Not staying, so.
I know. It's we went through the same thing with I was on the Pine Tree Principal Search Committee, and it's like, how do you replace Amy Frechette? You can't.
Right.
She does so much for those kids at that school. It's impossible to find someone that you feel is going to 100% fill that void. So you really just have to find the best person you can for the job and hope that they
Michaela, do you
everything they
have any sense of, I will say that I'm on the search committee, and I really can't say the candidates
Right.
because it's confidential, but we've had a few, and we're now reposting for another one. But one discussion is whether we try to find a superintendent in-state, a local person, basically. And we're not going to find anybody local. I mean, Kevin, as we all know, after Carl Nelson retired twice or 3 times, Kevin was kind of brought in as the assistant for a while.
Right.
Anyway, but what's your idea about what do you think a superintendent qualities you're looking for, but also the idea of either someone from the outside or someone from the inside? I mean inside, just even in the state of New Hampshire.
All right. I was on the assistant superintendent search committee, so we had the same kind of concept,
Yeah.
conversations there too, about do we want somebody from way outside bringing in all sorts of fresh ideas, or do we want someone that understands the nuances of our district? Obviously, we went with someone local
Yeah.
that understood the nuances of our district. I think part of that was because we knew there was going to be a new superintendent too. So I think some of the qualities that we need are someone that is a good communicator, because they have to speak to so many different people. We want them to be open-minded, we want them to be respectful. They need to be able to pivot on a moment's notice, because Kevin may not insert himself into the meeting sometimes, but because it's like a ricochet rabbit of conversations bouncing around and things changing so fast, sometimes I think we need someone that could step in and say, well, hold on, get back to your topic and move on, but I don't know that that's his role. As far as someone local, I don't know, I think I'm more, let's find the best candidate that presents themselves in a way that we think they could handle this bizarre, nuanced, amazing district that we have.
So you're not afraid of someone if someone came from
No.
Washington State or something?
No, I think that's, I understand the pull of someone local, I get that, but I think that we just need the best candidate possible, and I'd hate to limit our school district to only thinking smaller rather than globally and finding a better candidate that way.
Alex, what do you think?
Yeah, I very much agree with Michaela that it would, if there were a local candidate who was fantastic, that would be great. But you're unlikely to find someone who is as good as we need for this kind of complex role right here. If they did, great. If not, I think, yeah, far and wide is better, because it's a really difficult job. You're running a $40 million company, but it's far more important than a company.
Yeah.
It's educating everyone's kids. And you need someone who's kind of like more than two very different things in one that don't often come together, right? You need someone who can be a leader with vision, and can really lead people and have big ideas and help move things forward in new directions if necessary, but also be a very pragmatic manager day to day, and make sure the trains run on time metaphorically and all that kind of stuff. So that's a difficult thing to find together. So your job isn't easy. And the fact that it sounds like you had some candidates, but you've gone back out to get more. To me, is that correct?
That is correct.
So that's both a good sign and a bad sign, right? It's a bad sign in that we didn't get someone fantastic in the first round, but it's a good sign that you're not settling for someone. You're waiting, you're searching far and wide until you find someone who's really, as good as they can be.
Yeah, I wish I could comment on that, but I can't.
Right. Yeah.
No, only because it's not quite that way. But so let's move on to charter schools, and that kind of dovetails into the SAU itself. And we know that like Moltenboro is going to send a couple kids out of this district. It looks like. Why is that? Why do you think these other schools and the Bartlett, they're looking to change the mix of how they pay for their school? I think Bartlett has suggested that they only pay, right now it's a combination of per pupil and the appraised value of the town, of the land, right, property. So I think Bartlett is saying, which would be less expensive for them, let's just pay by per pupil. So why do you think some of these towns are thinking about moving on? Why do you think charter schools are becoming more popular? Alex, let's start with you.
So I'm not an expert on charter schools, and frankly, I'd love to talk to some of the parents whose kids are going there so I understand them a little bit better and why they're going. There's a lot of flexibility to a charter school, right? And they don't necessarily need to keep all their students, so it's almost like a private school in that way, and I can see that being attractive. More broadly, I worry about charter schools because unfortunately, it takes resources from the public schools, and at the end of the day, the education system that's available to all, those who make choices to go somewhere else and those who don't, needs to be as good as it possibly can be. So the answer is I don't know the reasons why each individual family is going to charter schools. I think every family has to make the decision that's right for them. And it is something important for us to understand.
Why do you think some of these sending towns are thinking about leaving?
They've got to decide what's best for them. And again, I'd love to hear why. And I think those discussions are ongoing. I know the chair is going out to meet with some of the other towns and I look forward to hearing the feedback as to what do they like about the Conway schools, what do they not, why are they considering going somewhere else.
Matt, what do you think? Charter schools?
I think as far as individuals, there's many different reasons. Parents may choose to send their kids to a charter school. They may have had issues at one of the public schools and think that a charter school is going to be different. It may just be their individual thoughts on education. That's how they feel it's best suited. As far as entire groups of entire school or towns going, it's probably got a lot to do with money. If they're getting a better, if they can save money by going to a charter school, then much like we're talking about saving money by closing an elementary school, towns have to look out for their taxpayers. So unfortunately,
it's reality.
It's reality, and it doesn't always work out, but that's people gotta do what they think's best.
I think the same thing. I can't speak to why so many families have sent their kids to charter schools. I know that the flexibility is appealing to some, those that I've spoken to, like the flexibility, the more outdoorsy type things, or the more open learning, the multi-grade classrooms. But those are all things that our public schools have done, can do, and all of those things. But I wonder sometimes if the discord in our school district is a part of it too. This idea of closing a school has been going on. I've been in the Valley for over 10 years now, and it's been a constant. We've heard about it every year, every other year, and it's been this ongoing argument, and I think people are feeling more and more divided. So I think that idea of, I could just go there and not have to deal with this and not have to worry about it and put my kids someplace new and exciting and all of that, I think that may be part of it. I don't know for sure why people are choosing that, but I think we need to look at making sure we have the same opportunities in our public schools to have those outdoor learning or those multi-grade classes, if that's what works, and all of these things, and try to be flexible in our public schools in the same way. But also, like, the charter schools don't have to follow the testing and all of those things, so there are some of that flexibility that they have that we don't, but that can play into it.
We only have a few minutes to go, so I want to give you, all three of you, a chance to to say, give you a vote for me speech.
No.
But just to be a little political here, you guys are a team. Like on Facebook, it's the Michaela Matt show. Explain what's going on there.
I like that you put my name
Alex,
first.
I'm gonna leave you
Yeah,
out.
that was good. Thanks.
I'm the last one picked.
Yeah, you're in right field, by the way.
Yes, apparently.
Yeah. So what's that about? And what's this with Jason? Now, Jason Fogier is the other one, because there are 5 of you running for 2 seats,
Yeah.
and the other 2 that we didn't have room on this stage, but we're going to interview
Right.
is Randy Davis and Jason Fogier. But there seems to be a little acrimony between you and Jason, and you guys actually have, I saw on your face, or somebody's Facebook, the Facebook page that is what's the name of it? Is the school, it's a Facebook page.
The
Concerned
Concerned Citizens of Conway.
Yeah. So is that your Facebook page?
That is a Facebook group that I started when I really started going to school board meetings and committee meetings. And I created just to kind of share the information that I was picking up to try to educate as many people
Okay.
about stuff that's going on.
But you're a team, so you've teamed up?
Well, so,
I mean, I saw it. There's like a bumper sticker that said
No, I know.
Michaela
Right.
and
So-
Matt.
So Michaela and I are friends. Our daughters are in the same grade. They are friends. So we talk about this stuff a lot, and we have the same kind of views on pretty much everything. I mean,
Yeah.
we obviously don't agree 100% on
Right.
everything, but I think we complement each other well. And being that there are 2 seats available, we thought it would be wise to kind of
Share support
share
Yeah, share
support
support.
and yeah.
and let people know that we do have similar values, similar beliefs. We're coming from
Right.
the same kind of place, even though we don't always agree on things. And
Right.
you came around to the school closing before I did, and you know what I mean. So different things, we come at things different
Yeah.
ways, but
It's
we
a
share
little bit
lot
of a
the-
double-edged sword if you kind of similar,
Right.
because people are going to say, "Oh, we're going to vote for one of
Right.
them,"
Yeah, it
and
could very well be.
and maybe an Alex.
Right,
Right.
that could
So,
absolutely
yeah,
be.
yeah. So Alex, you want to be on my team? We could share a Facebook page.
Well, I was hoping to get to know them because I have 2 votes, so I got to figure out who else I'm going to vote for.
Right. All right. So why don't we, Alex, if you take a minute and say why people should vote for you.
All right, well, thank you. So thanks for doing this, first of all. This
Sure.
is great. So I believe deeply in education. I went through the teacher education program, became an educator, and then moved on to the private sector. But first off, I think that educating our kids is the most important thing local government does. And we've got to do it right, and we've got to do it the best we possibly can. Now, I went from education to working in the private sector. So I work as a project manager for a developer, even though I was a kid who pulled ribbons off trees in the woods when I was, but anyway, now I've been doing development for years. So I know how to manage a budget. And that's part of the job of the school board, right? We have a large budget and we have to manage to it, and we have projects we need to run and keep them on time and on budget, and that's what I do for work. So I think I can marry those 2 things, having this deep appreciation for education and how important it is, and the ability to manage to a budget. I'm also an optimist. Sometimes I'm too much of an optimist. And so I see some of the challenges that are facing our school district as an opportunity. We have principals leaving, superintendent leaving, this school closure. We can look at this as, oh man, why do we have to do all these things or have all these challenges? We can say, this is a great opportunity to reinvent our school district and make it better. I mean, Conway is a world-class place to be, to live, to visit. People come from all over the world literally to be here. We should have a world-class education system for our kids, and we can have that, and we should. So that's why I'm running. I saw things kind of, I should have ended on that. That's a great little thing to say. But I saw what
Mr.
seemed like
Optimist. Yeah.
I saw what seemed like it wasn't
Yeah.
that, right? Every meeting I went to
Sure.
and everything I watched was,
Acrimony.
it was acrimony, and it was almost seemed like a race to the bottom
Yeah.
sort of thing. Like, how can we cut. And again, we can do better. We can provide a phenomenal education for our
Right.
kids and be responsible fiscally, and that's what we should do.
Michaela?
Okay.
That's a
I know that was a lot. Like that
Sorry,
was no,
not
that
too
was
long.
great. It was great to get to know you and hear what you had to say.
By the way, I was glad that even though I was the first one to put in my name for this, it bodes well for the town that there's good, well-meaning people who are looking to do this job.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think that's why I put it again. I could have easily said, I did my job, my term is done, and I could walk away. My head held high. I feel like I held my own. I did what I could do. I think I have more to give. I think as an educator, as a parent, budgets, I haven't been in business, but I have 4 kids and a husband and a house, and my parents live with us, so I know how to budget. I know how to do all of those things, all those pieces. I am still in education, so I see what's happening. I think that I will always what people need to know about me is I will always vote for kids first. Yes, we need to worry about the budget, we need to make all of those hard decisions, but I will always vote my beliefs for what's best for the students first.
Sure,
And
fair
if that
enough.
means people say, oh, I don't want her, she's not budget-minded enough, so be it, but I will always vote for kids first.
Fair enough. Matt, what do you think?
Yeah, kind of to piggyback off of Michaela, I've got 2 kids that are in elementary school, so I want what's best for them. You know, they've got friends, and I want to see all the kids get the best education they can get, and when it needs to be done in a fiscally responsible way, but I think we need more people that you know, have the students' best interests at heart to,
Sure.
to be on the board.
Well, thank you all. I mean, you're all very
you.
well spoken. And we'll, you know, it's going to happen. Jason and Randy have been taking notes watching this, so they're
Yeah.
going to be ready when I
Yeah.
interview them. So good luck. All right,
Thank you
and
very
thanks for
much.
coming.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.